Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I'm going to quickly just ask you to do the usual, which is just to quickly check to let me know if audio and video are both looking and sounding okay. And I think we've had a bit of a technical kind of hitch because it looks like my live stream, the official live stream that I'd set up, has not gone well. So if you're seeing this in the wrong place, I do apologize. It looks like YouTube and Ecamm Live didn't want to play ball tonight for me, so I do apologize. Hopefully everybody that was waiting the other one will jump into this one and we can all be good. So I'm assuming everything. Yep, thanks very much, Mark. As always, I'm going to quickly do a couple of little just a little chat for 2 minutes, wait for a few more people to come in, then I'm going to do my usual welcomes. And before we do, I've got a couple of things I'd love to ask you to do. First of all, if you do enjoy the live streams and you want to just sort of give YouTube the feedback to let you know that you enjoy it, feel free to hit that thumbs up button because it does help the algorithm let me know that you like it. Second thing is, if you are new here, if you could put hashtag new into the chat, just so I can say a special welcome to everybody that's new, and anybody that's an old timer joining me for, well, more than one time, should we say, you can put hashtag old in and you'll get a special welcome too. So I hope everybody is doing well tonight. It's good to see that people are starting to jump in and hopping over. So let's just go through, I'll say a couple of good evenings, a couple of welcomes. I say good evening, obviously different time zones are going to have different welcomes, but we'll just go for good evening based on the UK. So Max, you're new. Good to see you in tonight. Thank you very much for joining in on live stream. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you become a regular. As always, good to see you, Mark. And we've got John Hussey. Good to see you in as well. Yayan, we've got, now I'm never going to say that, Piaziev, I hope I said that correctly. Wuta, good to see you in. I know you said you were going to try and join us, so thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join in. It's always a pleasure. Stratos, good to see you as well today. I'm not going to ask why you're a little bit annoyed with oxygen, but I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. Okay, so we've got quite a few new people in tonight, so that's always good to see, and good to see some old faces coming in as well. So Andrew, good to see you in as well. Andy Von Busey, good to see you in. Let's have a little look what else we have. Rich, always a pleasure to see you. Andrew, good to see you in as well. Rodney, thank you very much for joining us as well. Lou, thank you very much for joining us as well. And I'm just going to pop your name up on you because I do apologize now. I'm never going to get that name right. So thank you very much for joining in tonight and becoming part of the live stream. It's always a pleasure. Okay, Amit, good to see you in as well. Tieka, good to see you in. Susan, thank you very much for taking the time out to join in tonight. And Rodney, I think I've already said that, but I'll say it again anyway. Robin, thank you very much for joining in, and hopefully I've got to everybody so far. If I haven't, I do apologize, and I will try my best to get everybody as we go through. Okay, so first of all, let's just quickly go through what we want to have a little chat about tonight. And as anybody that's been here for quite some time will know, most of the live stream is just about us. You check a topic out there, I'll check a topic out there, we'll have a bit of a discussion, we'll talk a few things over, and we'll just, shoot the breeze, shall we say. I got a couple of topics I do want to talk about tonight, so hopefully you'll find those of interest and you'll get sort of behind these conversations and put your input in there, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is that you give me your input. But before we go any further, tonight's beer of choice is a different one. So we're trying out this one, which is, pardon the pun, a butt comb. It's not bad. So if you've got the opportunity to grab a beer and join on the live stream, please do so. If you can't, if it's the wrong time of zone or anything like that, grab yourself a hot drink, a cold drink, whatever you want, and let's just chill out together. So, Nadia, good to see you in as well. Thank you very much for joining in. Avishai, hope you're doing well. I hope I said that correctly. If not, I do apologize. If I ruin anybody's name, I do apologize in advance. I'm terrible at names. Okay, so one of the first things I wanted to sort of talk about tonight and get your feedback on is a topic that I posted up on Twitter, I posted it up on Facebook, and I posted it also onto the YouTube community. So if you're not members of any of those, by all means join along. Just do a search for WPTuts on any of those and you'll find the relevant info. And it was about the pricing that is we're kind of seeing a lot more when it comes to plugins and things like that for WordPress. A little less so about the themes. I'm more kind of talking about the plugins. And one of my kind of thoughts is, as someone that spends a lot of time testing out different plugins and different themes and combinations to create content, to create tutorials, there's a lot of the time I've got to take a punt on a plugin. And one of the things that dictates whether I will or won't comes down to the price. And what I tend to find a trend, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is single site licenses for plugins tend to be way more expensive than they should be in comparison to their 5, shall we say, and then the 100 or unlimited kind of pricing. So first of all, what is your sweet spot? If you thought, actually, I wonder if this plugin will do something that I needed to do, but there's no free version available, you've got the sort of like the cut down version, the light version. What would be your sweet spot for actually spending money on a plugin that you were taking a punt on, taking a risk on, trying it out to see if it actually did what you wanted it to do? Let's take out the 30-day or 14-day money-back guarantee that a lot of companies say they'll give you because, sometimes they're not really worth it. What's your sweet spot? What would make you take a risk on a plugin that you hoped would do something as opposed to looking at it and going, too expensive? Now, I know one of the sort of topics that kind of came up was depend upon where you are and obviously the exchange rate, because most of these are working either in euros or predominantly in dollars. Now, the exchange rate isn't particularly great, I don't think, the world over for most people, but in some countries, like for example, South Africa, the exchange rate is pretty poor when it comes to the dollar. And that means that a $49 plugin could be just way too expensive to actually take that punt on, especially if you don't have the ability to have your money back if it doesn't do what you want it to do. So what are your thoughts on this? What do you think is a sweet spot? And do you think that the plugin developers are kind of shooting themselves in the foot, that they're losing potential customers on that one site license that may want to test something out and actually then move on up to maybe the unlimited and moving on to, sort of maybe 100 site licenses kind of thing. But they need to be able to sort of see if the plugin does what they wanted to do before they'll invest more money in it. What's your sweet spot, and what do you think of the pricing, and how has it affected you and your thought process in the different countries? So if you're in America, if you're in South Africa, if you're in Germany, Europe, UK, whatever, what are your thoughts on the pricing, and do you think that these software companies have been a little unrealistic? And if you do, why do you think they're pricing them in this way, where the difference between a single site license for, say, $49 and then 5 site licenses being $79, it's kind of crazy. I'd like to get your feedback on this to kind of gauge some interest, because this is one of those things that I'd like to have a little bit more information, because there's a couple of companies that I would like to speak to in relation to what they're offering, and maybe have a word with them and see about their pricing structure that I know has been commented on, that's the reason why people won't buy that particular plugin. It's not a must-have plugin. It's something that would be useful, but the prices it out of the market for them. So let me know in the chat section to gauge your interest in this. And like I say, give me your honest opinion, your honest thoughts on it, because I would love to know how you feel about the pricing and all those kinds of things. So let's have a little look at what we've got, see what feedback I've got to start off with. Okay. Dan, good to see you in. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's have a look. Right. $29, Chris. So you think $29 is a good starting point for a single site license? I can't say that I would disagree with you. I think the $29 to $39 for most people will probably be a relatively good sweet spot. Obviously, like I say, exchange rates in different countries may still make that a bit too much of a risk, a bit too expensive to do it kind of thing. But I do think for a single site license, that will be a good starting point around the $29 to $39 mark. Now, I had some feedback on Twitter, and one of the comments was that people that buy single site licenses are generally your DIYers, and they will generally require more technical support. They may be asking questions that are beyond the support of the plugin itself. Now, I didn't kind of think that was a particularly good example. Yes, you may well have someone that needs a bit more technical support, but to say that predominantly the only people that will buy a single site license are DIYers, I think is a little short-sighted. I think there are more than enough people out there that would buy one plugin to test it out. And if they find that it works, most of these software companies will have the ability to upgrade to the next level or the next tier, sort of pro rata. So if you bought one license at 39 and there was 79 for the next one, you just pay the difference to go up to the next tier. I think that is much better. And I also think, well, maybe they need to look at how they offer the support. If it's something that falls outside what the plugin does, why offer support for it? Or have community forums or Facebook groups and so on, can I have community support? Or maybe even look at, you have a number of tickets. You have, like if you buy the single site license, you have 2 free tickets. And anything beyond that, there's a small surcharge for answering those questions. There's lots of different ways I think you can look at it, but I think it's an interesting topic because I do think a lot more people would take a punt on plugins if the price wasn't so silly for the single site license. Because there's so many great plugins out there that do really, really good things, but they're just too expensive for a lot of people to actually take a punt on. So yeah, $29, $39 I think personally is a sweet spot. Okay, so what else do we have? DKW. Won't spend money on a plugin with no free trial version or at least a demo. Again, I can't blame you on that one. I mean, the good thing is if you get a light version, you can get a feel for it, but a lot of the time the light version will have a lot of the key functionality stripped out, and 9 times out of 10 it's that functionality that you want to be able to test, which means then it kind of defeats the purpose of having that light version. So I think the only real way of doing it is, like you say, to have a demo of it so you can test out the full functionality. Again, there's probably going to be logistic issues with that, to set that up, to have test environments to do it, sandbox environments, those kinds of things. But yeah, a good way of looking at it, actually. Let's have a look. What else do we have? Again, Max, free trial should work fine for me. I suppose the difficulty comes in with this, with a free trial, if it's a fully featured free trial, is then you've got all the license management to handle how long you'll have access to it before it runs out, those kinds of things. And I think the problem, which maybe a lot of companies don't necessarily look at, if you look at some of these GPL-based sort of online services, these websites that will kind of benefit from the GPL licensing system, and it's not illegal, immoral probably, but not necessarily illegal. You can buy the plugins on there, and you'll buy that version of the plugin for, I don't know, say like $10 or something. And obviously you won't have support, you won't have updates or anything like that. You have to buy it each time you want the update. But you can kind of understand why some people would turn to things like that and then not worry about actually supporting the company themselves. So you do have to ask yourself, is that a short-sighted kind of way of looking at things for companies that develop plugins? So let's have a little look what else we've got. Any other? Go around, good to see you in tonight. Uta, what do we have? Totally depends on the functionality. Most plugins have 14 or 30-day money back. I don't really mind somewhere between $20 and $150. I think when you kind of go above that, should we say $50 mark, I think that's when you're kind of going into, for most people at least, I would say, that's when you're going into that region of, this is probably a little bit too expensive to take that punt on. And if it doesn't do what I want it to do, that's potentially risking. But as long as they've got it's a good company that does have that 14 or 30-day money back guarantee, then there's obviously less risk involved in it. But we don't always know how good that is, and you've got to be careful. You've got to read the small print on those kinds of things to see if they will support them, if there's these get-out clauses that basically say, if you've done X, Y, and Z, we don't give you your money back. So if you do go down the route, obviously make sure you read the small print, the T's and C's, and make sure that everything is in place that you can get your money back. But yeah, good comment there. Okay. Yayan, hope I said that correctly. Plugin prices between $25 and $150 is usually pretty fair. I see some ridiculous plugins that want 100, basically nothing. So it all depends on how much value the plugin provides. And I think that's the thing is, there's kind of two ways of looking at it. How much value will the plugin provide, and does it meet or fix a need that I have that I don't currently have a solution for? And that way you'll then tend to probably spend more money on something like that. But it's just a difficult one. I think I would just like to see the single site license prices for lots of things come down, because I think a lot of companies have really been silly in their pricing. I mean, looking at form plugins, and I'm pretty sure this is still the same kind of thing, you can see how much money people are charging for a form plugin. And you can argue and say, well, yeah, a form plugin, a good form plugin that has conditional logic and all those kinds of advanced things that you may need is expensive. It's worth that high ticket price. But a lot of people are never going to use that high-end feature set. They're literally going to be using more of the more sort of mundane basic features. And then when you're looking at maybe a couple of $100 for that, and you compare that then to something like, I don't use Divi, but when you kind of consider a lifetime plan for Divi is what, $300, something like that. And you can continue to make money with that, and you can use that on client sites as many as you want in comparison to a single site license. It's a bit of a weird one. And I think some plugins, some specific types of plugins seem to traditionally charge silly amounts of money. And I say form plugins was definitely one of those, and probably still is in a lot of ways. So yeah, good to see the kind of prices though that you're kind of talking about. It's nice to know what kind of money you would spend. Susan, let's have a little look. What have you got to say? Good question. As a small agency for one site, I'm going to say £20. We'll say $20, whichever. But for an LTD up to 100, I have to consider US conversion too. Now, this is the thing. The next question I've got to kind of ask is lifetime deals. Now, I like a lifetime deal. You know, I've done quite a few different videos on different lifetime deals over on sites like AppSumo, and they can be very useful. Useful if you're going in early days, you know, it's kind of like early in the infancy, and you're giving a cash injection to that company. I think once a product establishes itself, then lifetime deals are probably not a good idea. As we talked about in the past, when it comes to lifetime deals, you then have to potentially support, lifetime help, lifetime updates, those kinds of things. So I think early on, lifetime deals can be good. And one of the comments that kind of come back time and time again was people would prefer to have a lifetime deal. So the question, I suppose, arises, would you take a punt, would you take a risk on a untested, should we say, product, you know, plugin kind of thing, if it was a lifetime deal and you knew it was going to potentially grow, but you didn't know the company behind it, would you then take that punt on that over an established company with an established track record with a product that was more expensive? Again, let me know, because I'd love to know what your thought process is on things like this. David Stamper, which plugin? Any plugin, I'm assuming, if you're talking to me. Daniel Stevens, single site license is no more than $50. Like I said, I think I'm probably with you. I think that sweet spot is between sort of 29 and 39, I think, unless it's an exceptional kind of plugin that does something very specific that I need it to do. And I'm just kind of the kind of person, I do tend to sort of take a punt on lots of different things, you know, whether that's things on AppSumo, whether that's a particular plugin that I think looks interesting that I want to potentially do some content on. But I'm kind of in a different sector, I suppose, for most people that are running as a freelancer, as a part of an agency, you're running your own agency. That's different because you have to justify that cost ongoing, you know, and lifetime deals are definitely a nice way to do it, because once you've paid it, then there's no ongoing cost and you can make that profit back off a couple of jobs. Okay. Richard, what we've got? The close pricing for one site versus 5 sites for an extra $20, then most people will buy the higher option for the sake of it. I agree. I mean, I can understand that's their probably sort of thought process. But for me, it's kind of like it shoots themselves in the foot, because I want to try something. I mean, if I go back a couple of years ago, I wanted something that would automatically post videos to my website. And I found a couple of different products that would do it for WordPress. And I bought one license because I wanted to test it out. Did it do what I needed it to do? And it did. So then I've continually bought the 5-site license, even though I don't run 5 sites that have videos on there anymore. But I buy that every single year to renew it. But I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't bought the first one with a single site license and there wasn't a stupid price increase. Yeah, it's nice when there's only a small increase from the 1 to the 5. But when that starting point is like $49 and the next one is $79, I think that's where you stop thinking, I'll take a risk on it. So I think 29 to 39 is probably the sweet spot for most people, I think, that are willing to take that little bit of a leap of faith. Okay, let's have a look what else we've got. Oh, thank you very much for the super chat, Prince C. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. You're an absolute star. Okay, so what else do we got? Let's have a little look. I always buy single site license, build a site and hand it over. And again, this is another good example. I mean, not every company, every freelancer, every agency is buying 5 licenses, 25 licenses or 100 licenses. They literally want to buy the license to hand that over then to the client and then either maintain that on an annual basis for the client and maybe charge a small premium or have it as part of their ongoing maintenance and support plans, or they let the client actually pay for that themselves. But I think when the price is quite high, that can alienate, you know, doing that kind of thing. Because as a client, the last thing you want is to have to pay for hosting, domain registration, SSL certificates. Then you've got licenses for, let's just say, Elementor, a theme, a couple of plugins. Suddenly your outgoing every year can be a couple of £100, a couple of $100 just to literally keep your website online. And some of these plugins may not even be that important to plug in, but you just need them to do a specific feature. But yeah, this is the only kind of option that does it, and it's overkill at $49 for a single site license. You know, I think if you've got really powerful plugins that are very niche maybe, that you know people will know that's exactly what they need and it fulfills that requirement 100%, then people will pay for it. But I think when you're a little bit more generic in what you're offering, I think you just have to be a bit more realistic about it. So I just thought it was a kind of interesting topic to put out there because I just want to gauge what people's sort of feedback is on this. Like I say, I want to potentially go back to a couple of different companies that I like their product, but I think their pricing is just out of whack. And I've talked about this before. I think I did a dedicated video on it. So it's interesting to kind of talk about those things. Anyway, let's have a little look what else we've got on there. Good evening, Pat. I hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for joining in tonight. It's great to see you around you. Okay, a couple of conversations going here, so please bear with me as I'm going through and not jumping into people's conversations. Let's have a look. Daniel. It's good having a lifetime and yearly option, annoying when no lifetime option. I can understand why people don't necessarily want to jump on a lifetime because it is expensive to maintain. Once you go past that initial sort of honeymoon period, then it probably gets easier with that one particular sale. But other than that, I think lifetime deals are a difficult one. If people limit what they offer, there's a certain number of lifetime licenses and once it's gone and never to be repeated. That's one way of looking at it. Or, like I said, when you're early in the development cycle and you need to raise some cash to inject that into the business to increase advertising, increase, support staff, those kinds of things, then there's nothing wrong with it. But I think as a long-term plan for most businesses, lifetime deals are probably not the best way to go about things. So I'm a bit of a, I've got a bit of a two-way kind of thought process when it comes to lifetime deals as a business, as a product grows and matures. Okay, Carl, always great to see you, young man. It's been quite a while. On vacation in Greece, you lucky individual, you. Constantly pop in and say hello. Keep rocking, Paul. Bringing everyone invaluable content over the masses. Good vibes. Hope you're doing very, very well. And if everybody like to say good evening to Carl and hope you're enjoying your holiday in Greece, that would be absolutely awesome. And stay safe, and we'll look to see you when you come back. Take care, my young man. Okay, Pat, what do you think about the nulled culture because of the GNU license? I think it's an inevitable thing because I think with any kind of software, there's always going to be that kind of nulled culture, whether that's video, audio, software, games for consoles and stuff like that. It's always going to be there. I think it's incredibly difficult to get rid of. Do I agree with it? No, I don't agree with it. When it comes to things like, plugins and themes and things like that, I think the developers should be paid for what they're doing. Otherwise, they can't afford to keep developing. And as a community, as people that actually make livings off creating websites and things like that, we all suffer. So I think that is a bad thing. Unfortunately, when it comes to things like some of the online services where someone will build your website for $10 and it'll include Elementor and Astra Pro and those kinds of things, the only way they can do that is by using Nulled, GPL, GNU licenses, those kind of things. So morally, it's wrong, but legally, when it comes to GPL, if I'm correct on this, you can actually. It's not illegal what they're doing. It's just more a case of immoral. Obviously, you have to look into this. I'm not giving you like any legal advice, but no, I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's harming the industry at large. But I can kind of understand why some people will do it, because when you, like I say, when you look at the exchange rate in other countries, a $49 plugin or a $49, Elementor license, for example, Elementor Pro license, they can't necessarily afford that. They might be charging $100 for the entire website. And that's got to have, a page builder, hosting, domain registration, a theme, all those kinds of things. So you can kind of understand why it happens. And again, I think this is part of the problem with so many different plugins being so overpriced for the single site license. I think if the prices were lower, not for everything, like I say, there's exceptions to every rule, but I think generally there's a lot of plugins out there that do exactly the same thing. There's some slight nuances that are different, but they ultimately do the same thing. You only got to look at the third-party Elementor add-on market to see how many of those plugins are all doing the same thing. They've just got their own slight variation on maybe the layout or the way that one thing works in there, but they all do the same thing. So you can kind of understand. I just don't think it's particularly a good way of going about it. Hope that answered the question, Pat, anyway. Right. Mr. Magoo. What makes me reluctant to keep purchasing is how quick some of these authors walk away if they don't get rich overnight. I currently have 13 plugins in my account that Envato removed. Yeah, I had exactly the same problem when it came to Envato. Originally, before I sort of like saw the light and looked at, you know, themes like Ocean WP and Astra and later on Bloxy and those kinds of things, I used to generally go over to the likes of Envato Elements, or, you know, as it was with the Theme Forest, and get my themes from there, settle upon a couple that were really good, but also because quite a few of those things got pulled, which meant that when your client came back and you had to update things because things had broken, you no longer had that theme available to you or that plugin available to you. So for me, that's one of the main reasons why I would never ever use Theme Forest or Code Canyon to get plugins and themes from ever again. I still like Envato Elements for lots of different things because I wouldn't touch them for the web design side of things, but when it comes to video, photography, stock images, you know, those kinds of things, I think it's great. It's a great resource that doesn't cost a huge amount of money. But when it comes to plugins and themes, I would never buy them on there again, ever. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. And the other thing that you've got to be careful of as well is when you buy lifetime deals, and this has happened quite a few times on AppSumo, is you buy the lifetime deal and they tie it to a particular plan. And they'll say, let's just say the professional plan. And then what they'll do is, once they've made that money, that cash injection, they'll do a bait and switch. They'll change the plans, and that professional plan, which your AppSumo deal was tied to, doesn't exist anymore. And they kind of use that reasoning to get out of maintaining your lifetime deal. And I think that's something you need to be very much aware of. One of the things I've kind of heard is most people, when they look, or not most people, but some people, when they look again at a lifetime deal, they consider lifetimes to be 3 years. Anything beyond 3 years is an added bonus, but 3 years is considered to be the lifetime of a lot of software products. So I think if you go in with that mindset, everything beyond that is a winner, but anything shorter than that is the risk that you took for jumping on that lifetime deal. And again, like I say, I think this is the reason why you have to be careful with lifetime deals, because it's very easy to change something about that deal, something about that plan that you've been tied to or that product you purchased, and get screwed over. Or the company sells. I mean, everybody knows my feelings about what happened with Delicious Brains and ACF, and also some other ones that I've sort of raised attention to. You have to be careful. Lifetime deals can have a way of biting you on the butt if you're not careful. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so let's have a little look. Robert Watner, thank you very much for your super chat. That's absolutely fantastic of you. Trying to decide on pricing tiers for Sticky Header Effects Pro. Thinking annual 15 single, 30 for 10 sites, 50 for unlimited. The one thing I would say to you, I'm assuming this is a plugin that you are developing yourself, and if that is the case, the only pricing that I would say to be careful of with is your $50 for unlimited. 2 reasons. Unlimited is something that can come back and bite you, because that's a lot to support if something goes wrong. Let's just say, for example, that something happened and there was an incompatibility with something further down the line, and someone's got 250 sites or 500 sites, and that's just one person, and they have problems. That's a lot of sites to support. Whereas I think if you were going down that pricing, I think the pricing is great. But personally, I would look at saying 15 for a single, 30 for 10 sites, and 50 for 100 sites, or 75 sites, or 50 sites. That way, I think that's more than enough for people to, A, take a punt on the single site license, but also anybody that's going to have a site that's going to be using that over that 50 sites, whatever, then there's another $50 goes into your pocket. They already know what they're buying into. They just buy in another tier, another block of licenses. So I think I would personally probably avoid unlimited, because chances are if you make this and it's successful and people buy into it, you probably will look back at some point and go, I'm changing the unlimited to X number of sites. Look at what Elementor did. If they'd come in originally and said 1 site, 5 sites, and 100 sites, when they then changed that, people wouldn't have batted an eyelid. And let's be honest about it, once you've done 100 sites using something like Elementor Pro, you've made your investment back on it. And if you were an early adopter, you got a 50% discount on renewals anyway. So you made your money back on that really, really quickly. Where they peed a lot of people off was changing the pricing and changing the number of sites all in a very, very short period of time. And that got a lot of people's backs up. So I would say if this is a product you're looking to do, personally, I'd avoid the unlimited and I would put a limitation on that. And I think something like 50 sites or 25 sites for $50 is probably going to be a sweet spot. Because like I say, $15 for a single site license, people will take a punt on it. That's my two cents worth. Anybody else want to chime in, by all means do chime in and give Robert your feedback, because I'm sure it'll be absolutely invaluable to hear that info. Okay, let's have a little look. Let's move on from this now. Let me just take a look. We've got lots and lots of comments. So George, good evening to you from Greece. I hope you're doing okay. And yeah, oh, okay, you're watching the Everton match, laughing my head off. As long as you're having a couple of beers, that's the most important thing, young man. Okay. Evolved Graphics, don't worry, you can catch up on the replay, and we're kind of still talking about the same topic, and we have been for a while anyway. So I think you've only kind of missed getting involved, but that's okay. Don't worry. You can always watch the replay if you want to catch up on what we're talking about. Okay. Let's have a little look. Okay, so thanks for the advice. You made 2 videos of my plugin. Oh, okay. Sorry, sorry, Robert. I do apologize. I made over 700 videos. It's hard to clearly keep track of what the hell I've created videos on and not. So next thing I want to talk about is UI and UX. But before we do that, let's have a couple of moments and have... So shoot me some questions. Chuck me a couple of questions and let me see what I can answer and if I can answer. Now, obviously, don't ask me questions like, how do I build a website in 10 minutes and can you show me on the live stream? Because that's not going to work. But ask me some questions, ask me about WordPress, Gutenberg, those kinds of things, whatever you kind of want to ask, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. Let's have a little look. Book my service, go a team. Elementor Pro or Gutenberg or something else. Your advice, please. It all depends on what you want to achieve. Elementor Pro is going to give you a very nice, clean, simple, WYSIWYG way of creating your designs, and you have the ability to see exactly what you're creating on screen. Gutenberg, with whatever block plugins you use, still doesn't have that kind of ability. You're not going to see your headers, you're not going to see your footers, and what you see on screen is not technically always what you see when you put it out there. So if you want something that's clean, simple, and straightforward and easy to kind of get up to speed with and see exactly what you're doing, Elementor Pro is probably going to be the way to go. But because it's a free version, try Elementor out to start off with the free version. That will give you the ability to find out, do you like working with it? Does it do what you want it to do? Is it quick enough for you? Do some speed tests on your designs, those kinds of things. And the same goes with Gutenberg. You can test out Gutenberg. You can try that with stackable blocks. You can try it with cadence blocks. You can try it with the slimmed down version of generate blocks. And there's tons and tons of different block plugins out there. I've done some videos on different ones of them. Try them out. No one can tell you what's going to work the best for you. Some tools will resonate with you better than others. The only thing I would generally say, and I'm going to do some testing on this myself because I want to see how fair this actually is, saying this continually. Elementor Pro or Elementor or any page builder is probably going to take a little bit more optimization time than Gutenberg on its own. By its very nature, generally you get your page builders are going to be a little bit heavier, therefore you do have to optimize a little bit more. And that may mean you need to do some server level optimization, or you may need some plugins to optimize things. And again, I've covered things like perf matters and things like that that'll help you speed things up. So I would generally say, test them out yourself. You can try free versions of all these tools, see what works the best for you. I don't think you'd have a bad choice either way. But I would say if you want to design 100% visually, then Elementor is probably going to be your better option out of those two. If you don't mind waiting a little longer, I would also recommend taking a look at Bricks Builder. If you head over to bricksbuilder.io, I think it is, you can create a free sandbox, which I think lasts for either 1 day or 7 days. So you can fully test out the totally unlimited version of the plugin and see if that works better for you. So many different great options out there. So I would say Elementor, try the free version. Gutenberg, try a couple of the block editing tools, and also try Bricks in this sandbox to see if that kind of resonates with you and you enjoy working with it. So that's what I would suggest. Now, can everybody do me a little favor while I'm going through the questions? If you're enjoying the live stream and you're getting value from this, can you just give it a thumbs up just to let the algorithm know that you're enjoying this content, and, it does me a little favor. So please do hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If not, hit the thumbs down button twice because that works pretty well too. You know the line. Okay, so let's have a little look. Let me have a little look. Whoa, pile a little thumbs up down there Let's have a look. Bear with me. How do I build a website in 10 minutes and show us on a live stream? I can hit the ban button now if you want, Rich. There's no problem at all. You know, go back to your son's 2nd birthday, young man. You shouldn't be on here anyway. So bugger off. Right. Daniel Stevens, do you work with graphic designers for your projects, or do you take care of that yourself? I've generally always taken care of the graphic design alongside the web design and those kinds of things. My original background was from print. So I used to do the artwork and things for a lot of print work, including companies like Mars and stuff like that. So I came from the print background, then ended up going to set up my own publishing company, going to do the training to find out how to use the software and get the qualifications to raise funding for that side of things. And as it was, life took a bit of a turn, and I ended up actually spending 10 years teaching people how to design websites, deal with multimedia, all those kinds of things, Photoshop, digital illustration, those kinds of things. So I've done a lot of that work myself. So I tend to find that I just do it myself, unless, of course, you've got a client that has their own branding that's been done for them, and they've got their own sort of style guide that has everything included. And then I'll take sort of design cues from them and integrate the design from the designers into the website design and any other collateral that I might actually produce. But generally, I tend to take care of it myself. I'm being a freelancer now. It's easier for me to sort of handle all that side of things as an individual. Not that I do a huge amount of it these days anyway. I spend more time actually creating content like the live streams, the new content I'm creating, all the things I do on YouTube and also on the website and things like that. So, yeah, hope that answered the question. Let's have a little look. What else do we have? Right. What do I think of Oxygen Builder? I think Oxygen Builder, and we've talked about this, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I've talked about this quite a few times in different live streams and things like that. But to put it sort of like simple, I think Oxygen Builder is a good product. I think it's got a good reputation around it. Definitely now with version 3. I think earlier versions didn't necessarily have such a strong reputation, but it has matured and is still maturing into a solid product. The only thing I've said, and I've said this in many times before, I'm not really a big fan of the interface. It feels dated and a little bit clunky, which I understand they're actually looking to improve that side of things. I just found when I was working with some dynamic data, especially when working with sort of like the loop layout and things, it was painfully slow to work with. So hopefully that's something that I've addressed. I haven't gone back and tested it out for quite some time. But I've got nothing against Oxygen. I think it's a very, very solid builder. I know if you want to find out more about it, Stratos Tutorials has some great content on his YouTube channel. Just do a search for Stratos Tutorials to have a little look. But I think there's nothing wrong with Oxygen. I've covered it several times in different videos, and I think it's got a lot of strengths in comparison to some of the other products out there. I think it's got good dynamic integration. Just sometimes, like I say, it's a little bit clunky. And I think if you want to get the best out of it, you need to understand a bit more about HTML, definitely CSS, maybe a bit of JavaScript to give you sort of like a heads up, maybe a little bit of PHP. But you can still get an awful lot done without knowing those things. But you can get the best out of the tool, I think, with a little bit of knowledge in those different sort of disciplines, should we say. But yeah, Oxygen is a solid product, and I think it's got a very solid community based around it. A lot of great tutorials. I know Elijah's doing some great stuff. Permaslug's doing some great stuff out there. So you've got a lot of great channels that are creating great content, including Stratos, to help you get the most out of Oxygen Builder. So hope that answered the question anyway. Okay, let's have a little look. I've taken a clock box, a good man. No to Bricks Builder, they didn't even reply to my email. I don't know why. Well, what was the email about? Like I said, I can't answer about technical support and stuff like that. I just look at the product as it is. So disappointed to hear they didn't answer your email, but hopefully give it a try again. See if you can get a better response from it. So fingers crossed. But I can imagine that because it's growing in popularity, I kind of wonder, are they scaling up their support in comparison to the amount of people that are actually jumping on board and taking Bricks Builder and starting to use it? And I think when they release some of the final things like RC1 of version 1.5, I think it's 1.4, sorry, it came out today. So I think when that releases, there's going to be a lot more people jumping on board. So I hope that Thomas and the other people behind Bricks are kind of gearing things up for a larger adoption of it as a product, because I think that's going to help make or break any kind of product, is the support side of things. We know that Elementor have had a bash in for their support over the years. And I think any product that starts to grow and become more and more successful and more popular, that is one of the key things that they need to make sure they focus on, is having solid support. So I'm starting to hear that. Maybe give them another try and see if you get anywhere better with it. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, let's have a little look. Right. Susan, I morphed from publishing to online to a natural evolution. Yeah, it was one of those things that I didn't really go in the intention of teaching anybody. It was one of those crazy things. I just literally went there to go and get qualifications in publishing, digital publishing, so I could then raise finance to start a business. And like I say, I got told that I had a natural ability to teach people and explain things. And did I want to become a tutor? And I spent 10 years then doing that once I did my qualifications in it. So I think it was a good thing. And, sometimes you got to go with those decisions that you didn't realize were even going to be presented to you. So yeah, pretty cool. Stardust V4 has improved the UI. That's good to hear. I just think it's one of those things that they just could have done with, and this is Oxygen, by the way. I think they could have done with bringing someone in to work on the UI with them. And I can't think of the name of the product that I took a look at a little while back that kind of changes the look and feel. And that was a really good way of refreshing and making the whole Oxygen interface just a little bit nicer to work with. And I say it's all personal opinion. Different people like different things, how they build this and their software. Some people absolutely love the interface. For me, I don't really like it too much. But it's functional, it does the job, and it gets the job done. Okay, so hang on, Richard Wade. Genuine question now, though. Go on then, Rich. What's your genuine question? Let's have a look. I use the form on their website to send an email. Might be an idea to, if you're not already a member of the Facebook group, go on there and tag Thomas in and just give them a little nudge to say that you asked a question and you've had no response back from it. Might be a little nudge to help them look into whatever it was you were asking. I would say try that. Okay. Let's have a look. And okay, we've got lots of different things going on. Okay. Let's have a look. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll come back to the questions in a moment. The final thing I want to kind of cover, now we've got about 15 minutes left, is the UI and UX tutorials that I released last week and the week before. Now, I don't know how many people actually take a look at it, but I was actually quite surprised at how well that's done. So I wanted to just ask a couple of questions tonight about how do you feel about UI and UX? And we're talking about user interface and user experience. These are the kind of things that not everybody has the skills in these areas. But what I'd love to know is, what kind of things would you like me to cover in more detail? Now, I know that a couple of things sort of popped up in the comments and the questions and things in those videos. One of the key things was people wanted to know about the 8-point grid. Wanted to know more about that. I got a questions on that. And also things like the 60-30-10 rule when it comes to color, dealing with M's and REMs and percentages and clamp and all those kinds of things. Do these topics interest you? Or when it comes to UI and UX and all those kinds of things when it comes to building websites, what areas do you find that you'd like more information on or you may struggle with? Did you watch the UI and UX videos? Did you pick anything up from them? What were your thoughts on the content that was contained inside there and those kinds of things? Because I've got to be honest, I've been kind of blown away by the response and the number of people that have shared that information, the number of great comments I've had on it, and in all honesty, the number of great views I've had in it. So I would love to know, what are your thoughts on this UI and UX kind of series of videos that I'm putting out there? Any specific things that you struggle with and you'd like to know more about? Maybe even looking at tools like Figma or Adobe XD for prototyping designs before you even go ahead and move over to Gutenberg, hand coding, Oxygen, whatever you're kind of using, the tools you're using. Because I would love to know, because I know it's very easy from a technical point of view to build websites. We can go, okay, there's data there and there's data there, and we need to put these things together, and you can put that data out there. But if it looks like crap, was it worth all the time and effort? So do you find you've got a weak spot when it comes to UI UX? Do you have any amazing resources that you've come across and you've found that you think these are brilliant and they've given me so much information? If you've got anything like that, any links like that, by all means, pop those in the comment section, pop them in the chat now, whatever you kind of want to do, so I can take a look at those, because I'm always on the lookout for resources. Found a couple of really good ones over on Medium, which if you take a look at the latest UI UX video that I put up a couple of days ago, which, bear with me, I'll just pull that up on screen. Let me have a little look. I'll pause that so it doesn't play. And if we take a look inside there, let me just pull this up on screen. Okay, doesn't want to show me any more or any less. Doesn't matter, it won't show up for some reason. But there's a couple of links inside there to a Medium article, which is to do with the 8-point grid system, which I will be doing a dedicated video on, covering that in a little bit more detail, because I think it is a really solid way of working. But do you want to learn things about like how to use Figma or Adobe XD or those kinds of tools? I mean, there's lots of different options and they all work in the same kind of way. Prototyping your designs before you build things, maybe even going through the whole prototyping process inside a tool like Adobe XD or Figma with all the interactions that kind of go with it before you then take it over and then build it. And obviously, I wouldn't do an entire site build, but I might sort of do something along the lines of creating a full layout inside something like Figma and then taking that apart and building it in the likes of Elementor or Bricks Builder or, Gutenberg or something like that to see the whole process. Is this the kind of thing that you would find interesting that would help you expand your skills, ultimately charge more if you're doing this for a living, or just speed up the process so you become more profitable? I mean, at the end of the day, both of them put more money in your pocket, as it were. I'd love to know. Let me know. Because for me, it's been an absolute blast to sort of go through and learn more about things that I knew about, but just being able to really understand why some of the things that I do make such a difference. It's been really interesting and had fantastic feedback. Over 10,000 views in the space of a couple of days, which is pretty awesome for a topic that my channel is not even known for. So that's been really, really cool. So let me know a little what the comments and questions are on my question. Right, before I do, let me just answer your question, Casper. Does your primary income from your clients or YouTube tutorials, courses, etc.? Definitely YouTube tutorials and courses and those kinds of things. I'll quickly go over, not in a huge amount of detail, but when I left my partnership, my business to become a freelancer, the key thing that I did when I set that way of working up was to have multiple revenue streams. My business practice has been for the last 5 or 6 years. I have to have multiple streams, and then if one has a problem, I have more streams coming in that replace them, and I can look at freeing up the time that one is no longer bringing revenue in from, look at new streams, those kinds of things. When we had the pandemic 2 years ago, I decided double down on YouTube, start putting out content as it was 5 times a week to start off with, and see what that does. That was the best thing I ever did, and that's increased the channel, improved the income, improved the revenue streams, those kinds of things. So now I don't take on new clients. I still only service the existing clients that I have. So my income from client work still comes in every single month, and I still work with existing clients and different things like that. But the majority of my work now is more focused on explaining, understanding what you guys need to know about, and then creating content to help you become more successful in your businesses or to start your own business, whether that's a freelance, an agency, whatever kind of thing you want to do. That for me is going back to what I love. I love technology, I love design, and I love teaching. So this allows me to go back to what I did for 10 years in a different way via YouTube and those kinds of things. So predominantly that's where my income has shifted over to. Prior to that, it was probably more to do with the client income and less to do with YouTube, but doubling down on that has changed things around and flipped it around probably totally. Okay. Confirms my ability to teach. Thank you very much. I hope I do a decent enough job anyway of explaining things. That's the most important thing, that, what I'm trying to show you, you kind of walk away and feel like you learnt what it was I was trying to show you. So thank you, Susan. Right. Uta, I really enjoyed the UX UI video. I suck at designing, and this really kind of helped already. I think this is the thing. It's like, you don't have to be the best designer in the world. I'm nowhere near a great designer. But I think when you understand the fundamentals of color, typography, and spacing, and creating the layouts, You can get inspiration from anywhere. But when you look at that inspiration and then you try to recreate something similar, you probably come across a situation where, well, I've done something like really close to that, but why does mine look like complete garbage? And that looks so good. And a lot of the time that comes down to the fact that the designer that put that together understands spacing, typography, color, relationships with different sort of areas, white space. There's nothing complex about those, but once you understand them, you can use them and you can implement them. You can break those rules when you need to, but you need to know them and understand them to be able to use them effectively. And that's, I think, where the fun from the UI UX kind of series has really come in. And I know the feedback that I've had has been on those kinds of things. It's like, if you looked at your design and wonder why it just didn't look good, this is probably why. Your spacing was a bit all over the shop. Your visual hierarchy wasn't there. You didn't understand the relationship between the different colors, those kinds of things. All those play a massive part of what takes a average design to becoming a really good design. So I'm glad that more people are enjoying that. So I intend to sort of grow that side of things. And it all kind of stem back to, I was asked, or I put up a poll on the Facebook group asking, what would you like to see in the next course that I release? And the overwhelming one was UI and UX, which I kind of found weird because I've never done anything on UI UX other than a couple of videos on the basics of design. So it kind of got me thinking, well, if I'm going to be able to do something like that, I need to first of all find out, can I teach it effectively? Do I understand what it is I'm trying to teach? And would people even be interested with what people come to the channel for? So these couple of videos have really opened my eyes to the fact that people do want to know how to use UI and UX, how to implement it in designs, and those kinds of things. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. UI UX workflow would be nice. How to stay consistent with maybe global widgets, etc. Yeah, I think those are the kinds of things that once you set up your what's the word I'm looking for? Design system, where you put your space in, your colors, any effects you want, and those kinds of things. When you've got that and you create that to start off with the beginning of a project, makes everything else considerably easier, especially then if you're using something like Elementor or a theme with your global styling for typography, colors, spacing, all those kinds of things, then the process becomes relatively simple. So this is where I'm kind of going with that. Would you like to see a video on creating something in a tool like Figma and then actually realizing that as a finished final product? I'd probably, like I say, only do a page just to sort of demonstrate like a home page, go through the reasons why I chose specific things, and then create the end result and sort of talk through as we're going through it, why I did it, different decisions, show you how to actually implement the 8-point design, 8-point grid system, those kinds of things into it. So yeah, I would love to be doing something like that. So keep an eye out. Something like that will be coming in one way or another. Rich, UI UX is great to see, especially as part of a full site build tutorials. Yeah, so I think it's just basically, I just kind of answered that. So yeah, I totally agree. As a whole, not in isolation to everything. And I think that's probably why the last video was so well received, is because it was easy to sort of follow the train of thought through with the same kind of result, the card, shall we say, that I used as the example pretty much all the way through it, because you could then see how each of those different things were all pulling together to give the final result, and then understanding why that one looked better than a previous basic example that didn't have some of those things in place. So yeah, definitely. I love Medium, Jeremy. Oddly enough, me too. Now I'm sort of starting to delve into it a little bit more. And the nice thing is with it, I kind of PDF'd some of the articles that I think are really good. I can go back to and take some of the things away from that to create more UI UX based tutorials to really impart some useful, really useful skills. UX is a must-have now. I totally agree. That's absolutely right. As web designers, we can't be just a web designer anymore. If you're part of an agency where you've got a team behind you and you've got one that does copywriting, one that does the prototyping, one that does the coding, those kinds of things, yeah. But for most people, that isn't the case. We need to be multidisciplined these days. So we need to understand tools like Photoshop or the Affinity Suite. We need to understand, sort of UI, UX. We need to understand how to prototype. We need to understand how to take that design and realize it. We need to test it, to optimize it, all those kinds of different things. So I think having those skills and having the ability to go back and see those skills and see how do we implement those in real world scenarios, I think that's all invaluable, and it just makes you a more rounded designer and a better proposition then to potential clients. Okay, what else do we have? Video boy, I'm really bad at colors. Please create an in-depth 60-30-10 rule on how you implement it in your website. Funny you should say that, because I'm intending to do that. I'm going to show you how you can, if you suck at color combinations, which a lot of people do, there are plenty of tools out there that will give you a great starting point. And if you're working for a client, chances are they're going to have at least one color that they want to utilize. And then we can use simple tools online like Coolers or Adobe Color to be able to take that one color, and then we can deal with things like analogous colors or complementary colors or triads and those kinds of things. And we can kind of create color schemes very quickly. And even if you don't want to do that, you can still find great starting point color schemes that have already been designed by people, and then use sites like Dribbble, where you can take a look at how those combinations have been used in conjunction with each other. And I think then when you understand the 60-30-10 rule, and anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, watch the right at the back of the beginning of my UI UX video, explains it in there. Once you understand that, you'll deal with color in a different way. You will have a better understanding of how to implement color into your designs. So I do intend to be doing a tutorial on how to kind of take the 60-30-10 rule and how you can use that in various different tools to create great color combinations. Okay, Chris S. Definitely Figma tutorials would be great, then show building in Elementor. I probably will do Elementor. I also do things like Gutenberg and stuff like that. I don't want to sort of pigeonhole just into one tool. So, and I just hope that Elementor will hurry up and bring out the container and take it away from being, an alpha experiment, because people are going to start building with this, and then there's the potential for things to go wrong. And all the other page builders out there, pretty much, including most of the builders to do with Gutenberg, are all using either the CSS Grid or Flexbox. So Elementor really need to pull their finger out and actually get this finalized, released, and out there so people can start building their designs using much better ways of working with things. So I will take a look at doing Elementor for different things, but it won't be the only focus when we're talking about creating these different kinds of layouts and taking them from tools like Figma or XD and so on. Okay. Daniel, interested to know if you now design mobile first. I don't design mobile first, but I have been considering doing a video on designing specifically for mobile. The reason I don't design mobile first is one of the things I'll tend to do is look at the statistics of what my audience is coming from. So for example, like the WPTuts website, it's something small like 5%, maybe 10% at a push of my audience use mobiles to view the site. So designing mobile first is kind of a waste of my resources. However, if I was looking to redesign a client site and the majority of their traffic was coming from mobiles and tablets, then I would design mobile first. But mobile first is more than just design. There's a lot of other things that need to go into consideration, including, sort of the colors that you're using, the layout, the design, simplifying what's being actually displayed on a phone, not just from a design point of view, but from a content point of view. So there's lots of different things. And again, it's one of those things that I've been toying with the idea for quite some time to create a dedicated video on designing specifically for a mobile, and then look at how to scale up as opposed to what most of us do, which is design for desktop and scale down. So it is something that's in the thought process. It's just having the time to sit down, research, go through all the different things that need to be done with it. But there is probably something in the works for that. I just don't know when it will be just yet. Okay, so we're going to have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap things up for tonight. Let's have a little look. And Susan, I totally agree. White space is your friend. White space is absolutely your friend, and it's also your viewer's friend. Nothing worse than having everything just jammed together and it looks absolutely bloody awful. So yeah, white space is, if there's one thing you learn from UI design, it's how to use white space. If you can deal with that, then you can make lots of other things work. So if you want to learn one thing, find a good article or find a good video on how to use white space effectively, learn and practice it. Once you've got that, your designs will immediately look considerably better. Then you can start looking at things like color combinations, typography, little effects and things like that that influence how people work and interact with different designs, including the psychology of color and things like that. Okay, let's have a little look. Consistency, consistency, consistency. Absolutely, 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 Chris. Totally agree. Prototype in XD would be awesome. It'll either be XD or it'll be Figma. Probably Figma, just because I no longer have my Adobe account, so I know I can use XD. But if I'm honest, I found Figma was just a little bit nicer to work with. When I did the UI UX video last week, that's pretty much the first time I ever used it, and everything I put together was in there, and it just felt intuitive. Just felt really, really intuitive, and nothing I was doing in there felt like I had to stop and think and do a little search for how the hell do you do X, Y, and Z. But I think once you understand one or the other, it's all the same. They all work in a very, very similar fashion. Very true. Great boost for me. Great lessons for you. Thank you very much. That's good to hear. Let's have a little look. Right. Hi, Paul. Discovered your channel recently. I'm fairly new to WordPress and Elementor. I'm currently practicing a Hello theme. What do you suggest for extra themes for beginners? If you're working with Elementor, I would probably say to stick with the Hello theme. Unless, of course, well, actually, you can do the headers and footers in there now anyway. Unless you want something that allows you to do a lot of things where you don't need to use Elementor for everything, so you want to get away with using the free version of Elementor, at which point I would say Bloxy would be my first choice. Then you would want to take a look at Astra and or Cadence theme, because all three of those have header and footer builders built in, which means that you don't have to rely upon another third-party plugin to do something like that. You can literally do it all inside the theme, and then you can use Elementor to design your pages, and if you wanted to, you could just leave it to use Gutenberg to do the blog content pages, those kinds of things. But they would probably be the three themes I would sort of suggest looking at if you wanted to move away from Hello, or you wanted to just use the free version of Elementor and not necessarily use the Hello header and footer, because I didn't find that particularly good when I tested it out. So they would be my three choices. Bloxy first, then like say Astra and Cadence theme for the other two. Okay. I'm going to do one more question and then we're going to call it a night. So let me just answer this one now. Crocoblock series. What do you mean? Am I going to actually create a series or another series, or expand upon the series I already have? If it's Crocoblock, then I would primarily only be dealing with the dynamic side of things, which would be, your Jet engine, your Jet smart filters, your Jet search, and maybe the newly released Jet theme core, I think it is. So it allows you to create the whole theme. And also, I want to sort of take a look at using Jet engine and those tools a little bit more with Gutenberg, using the Crocoblock tools, because Jet Engine is now starting to get more support from third-party companies, which is really good to see. I mean, Admin Columns Pro and Admin Columns supports, Admin Columns Pro, I don't think the free version does, but that supports Jet Engine. You've got Bricks now supports Jet Engine, and there's quite a few other ones. So Jet Engine is starting to get a lot more traction in third-party tools, so it's good to see that. So I will be taking a look at doing some more with the Crocoblock tools, but it will be primarily dealing with the dynamic content, probably in Gutenberg and probably in Elementor, but maybe focusing more on Gutenberg right now. So yeah, I will be doing more with it though. Okay. So I'll answer Richard's question now, and then we're going to call this an evening. So Richard, my genuine question seems to have been lost, but do you need Generate Blocks Pro with Generate Press Pro to be a serious contender to Elementor? I think that the difficulty here, Rich, is when you kind of do comparisons between these kinds of tools and a tool like Elementor, they're generally going to come up short in certain areas. And in other areas, Elementor is going to come up short. If you're talking from a pure amount of options, then I don't think currently there's going to be many, if any, combinations of a theme and the applicable block level plugin that's going to rival what Elementor Pro can do, especially when you consider the third-party support and the whole ecosystem around Elementor. That's a difficult one to do. But the reality comes down to how much of that functionality that's included in any of these tools do you need for a given project. It's much the same as Word. Let's take Microsoft Word as an example. If all you want to do is write a novel or you want to write a report in it, you're going to use 5%, if that, of what Word can do. But people will buy it because it's become the de facto WordPress, the de facto Word. Oh God, start again. The de facto word processing kind of tool. All right, you now have, Google Docs and those kinds of things. But for years it was. And I think that kind of happens with a tool like Elementor Pro as well. It becomes the de facto default page builder for WordPress, even though lots of people probably don't even need to use everything that's included in it. But from my point of view, where I've been tested out Generate Blocks and Generate Press, the Pro versions, yes, this still needs some of the features in there are not there that you might need to use, but the core features are there, and it's not really meant to be one of those hold your hand through every single step of the way themes. It's got the core fundamental tools, and there's ways in which you can do an awful lot. And when you look at the elements, which is basically like the hooks system, when you look at things like that and how you can use that with dynamic content, some of the new features that are coming into Generate Blocks Pro in 1.5, I think it is, it can do an awful lot, and it's a very, very powerful combination. But when you compare it to the likes of something like Cadence Blocks and Cadence Theme, it can look really stripped back. But I would always go back to that. How much are you going to use out of all those tools in comparison to they just seem like this is cool because you've got so many widgets inside there. There's no right or wrong tool set out there. There's just the right tool or tool set for the job that you're currently working on. I think that's the thing to take away. I mean, I'm more than happy if you want to, Rich, give me a shout privately and I'll set up a test site with Generate Blocks Pro and Generate Press Pro so you can have a little dig around, have a play about with it, and you can see what you think of it. But you need to dig into it a little bit. By all means, like I say, if you need that, give me a shout and I'll set that up for you one day and you can take it for a spin and see what you think and what people are talking about with it. But yeah, by all means. So hopefully that's answered the question. I'm going to leave it there because I think there's a couple of questions on you now that there's a lot of different sort of like longer term questions. I will answer this one though. Is Gutenberg disappearing? I mean, are we talking about my naming convention, calling it Gutenberg as opposed to Gutenberg? No, it will always be affectionately known as Gutenberg to me because Gutenberg itself is still pretty much crap. It now just requires, and is a good third-party sort of ecosystem growing around this in the same way that Elementor has, that make it a much more usable tool. And if you kind of look at something like Generate Blocks and Generate Press, they're actually bucking what WordPress are actually trying to do with their full site editing and all that side of things. Whether that's a good path to go down or a bad path, I don't know. But yeah, Gutenberg on its own is still a turd. I don't think that's going to change for a very long time. So, okay. Thank you very much. And right, so what I'm going to say is that's where I'm going to wrap it up tonight. We've gone about 10 minutes over, so that's pretty cool tonight. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's live stream. If you have, give that thumbs up button a click because it does help me out. If you didn't, you can hit it twice. That doesn't matter. That's fine. That's no problem at all. Now, 2 weeks' time before I come back again, which will be the 25th, I think. Yeah, the 25th of May. So Wednesday, the 25th of May, we'll be back for another live stream. If you've got any specific topics you'd like me to cover or things to talk about, drop this in the comment section down below. Or if you're a member of the Facebook group or you follow me on Twitter, drop your questions and things in there, your topics, your comments, all those kinds of things. Stay safe wherever you are. Thanks once again for joining me. I will see you all again in 2 weeks' time. And have a fantastic day, evening, whatever time it is with you guys. Take care.